Well, a very good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Moroki on your TV, radio and online.
Yes, and we're with you until midday discussing the big issues of the day and giving you reaction to that confidence vote from last night.
Yes, tell us how you're feeling this morning. You're happy that the Prime Minister lives to fight another day? Email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk with your thoughts.
Yes, that's all coming up in just a moment, but before that, a quick update on the morning's headlines with Rosie.
A very good morning to you. It's just 1 minute past 10. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date today on GB News. Well, the Prime Minister's meeting with his cabinet after winning a crucial vote of confidence in his leadership last night. 59% of Conservative MPs backed the Prime Minister. Well, that means he's now immune from a leadership challenge for a year. Boris Johnson says he can now move on and focus on what matters to the public, including tackling the cost of living crisis and easing the NHS backlog. Well, speaking to reporters this morning, Conservative MP Andrea Leadsom wouldn't commit to saying whether Johnson is the right person to lead the party into the next election.
The party gave its views yesterday, and today is another day we move on. And I know the Prime Minister will want to focus on absolutely the priorities of this country.
So he's the right man to lead the party into the next election?
That's it, thanks.
Conservative MP Greg Smith, who voted in favour of the Prime Minister, told GB News the government needs to focus on the priorities of the people and not itself.
Last night, 60% of the parliamentary party, which is a decisive margin, uncomfortable as the 40% is a decisive margin. The parliamentary party now needs to rally behind the Prime Minister, accept that result and get on with doing the things we were elected to do. Let's not tear each other apart. Let's have the debate on exactly how we are delivering for the British people, not about personalities.
Well, the head of policy and public affairs at Opinion Research, James Crouch, told GB News Boris Johnson would have lost the vote if it had been down to the public.
He conducted a snap poll yesterday morning, and had the public been voting instead of Conservative MPs, he'd be out of a job by a margin of 2 to 1. So that's the kind of scale of the challenge that he's got to overcome.
In some other news now, President Zelensky has thanked Boris Johnson for providing Ukraine with the weapons it needs to protect the lives of its people. The UK is supplying Ukraine with long-range, multiple-launch rocket systems that can hit targets up to 50 miles away. Fierce street fighting continues in Severodonetsk as Russia steps up its drive to capture one of the largest remaining Ukrainian-held cities in the Donbass region. President Zelensky says, despite being outnumbered, Ukrainian forces have every chance of fighting back in the region.
I am grateful to Prime Minister Boris Johnson for his complete understanding of our demands and his preparedness to provide Ukraine with exactly the weapons it needs to protect the lives of our people.
Patients with long COVID are faced with often inadequate NHS care, as diagnosis and treatment varies hugely across the UK. That was the analysis of the Royal College of Nursing, who are urging the government to increase investment into the long-term impacts and treatment of the infection. Long COVID is being treated by some clinics as a physical condition, but mainly as a psychological one by others. Average spending on utilities increased by more than a third in May compared to a year ago. New data from Barclaycard reveals people are compensating for the costs by giving up online subscriptions and going out less to bars and restaurants. Amnesty International UK says that around 3 in 10 people are worried they could become homeless in the next 5 years because of rising housing costs. The charity is accusing the government of rationing access to housing due to a severe shortfall. They're calling for affordable housing to be made a human right that's protected in law. The government says it's giving councils £2 billion to tackle homelessness over the next 3 years. Abusers who strangle or intentionally affect their victims' ability to breathe in an attempt to control or intimidate them now face up to 5 years in jail. It's a new offence. It's called non-fatal strangulation, and today it comes into force in England and Wales as part of a landmark domestic abuse piece of legislation. It's also going to apply to British nationals who are overseas. The Domestic Abuse Commissioner says the new offence marks a significant step forward to protect domestic abuse victims. The government's chief scientific advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance, will receive an honour at Buckingham Palace for helping to lead the UK's battle against coronavirus. Sir Patrick was originally knighted in the 2019 New Year Honours List. He'll now be elevated to become a Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath, an honour which recognises the work of senior military officials and civil servants. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to Patrick and Mercy.
Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's on your TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined up for you to kickstart your day. Here's what's on the menu.
Right, people. Well, the Prime Minister survives, doesn't he? For now, at least. Boris Johnson won a confidence vote in his leadership on the Parliamentary Conservative Party, but 4 in 10 MPs voted against him.
Yes, and in non-political news, are we taking the threat of Islamist terrorism seriously enough? Well, we'll be joined in the studio by a security expert to discuss just that.
We will indeed. And later on in the show, we'll be talking to Major General Chip Chapman on where we are with the Ukraine conflict, which has been raging now for 3.5 months.
Yes, well, that's all coming up and much more as well across the programme. We're here with you until midday, and you can get in touch with your views at GBViews at gbnews.uk. But first, Patrick gives his opinion on releasing convicted terrorists from prison.
Partygate has been a distraction, hasn't it? But while we've all been distracted, it's emerged that 11 of the UK's most dangerous terrorists are set to be released from prison. Another 21 are due for release in the next 2 years, and 11 more by the end of 2026. We're not talking minor terrorists here. We're not talking about weird teenagers from Birmingham who Googled the ISIS manifesto. No. We're talking about the likes of Jawad Akbar, who plotted to blow up Kent's Bluewater shopping centre and London's Ministry of Sound nightclub. He's got a parole hearing coming up, naturally. Ranjib Ahmed, who is Al-Qaeda's highest-ranked UK terrorist. I don't know how he managed to get that title, by the way. Presumably it's like jihadi top trumps. But anyway, he's due to be released. Good stuff. And we'll just add these two, shall we, to what is a very, very long list of terrorists who are back out and about. Anjem Choudhury is the main one, of course. This guy has been linked to countless terror attacks, both in this country and abroad. He's a one-man radicalisation machine. So naturally, we lock him up for 5.5 years and then allow him back on the streets to continue hate preaching. This guy pledged allegiance to ISIS and wrote to the Taliban, get this, urging them to be more hardline. His dossier to his terrorist brothers was called Sincere Advice to the Leadership of the Taliban. Yeah, I know. If that isn't a massive red flag, then I don't know what is. Oh, by the way, talking of flags, London Bridge terrorist Karam Butt featured in a Channel 4 show called The Jihadis Next Door, during which he unfurled an ISIS flag in a London park. Nothing happened to him. Loads of people died on London Bridge and Borough Market. These terrorists are very open about what they want. They want to destroy our way of life and massacre us all in the process. Women, children, sometimes both, it would seem, actually, in the case of Liverpool terrorist who blew himself up outside a maternity hospital. I tell you what, the people on our parole board are much braver than I am. They must have balls of steel. Not only content with releasing child killers like Colin Pitchfork or the mother of baby P, they'll let terrorists back out and about as well, won't they? They must be made of stern stuff, because I tell you what, there's absolutely no way I could look a dead child's mother in the eye after I'd allowed a convicted terrorist to be released back onto our streets so he can blow himself up in a shopping centre. Some people say, we can rehabilitate them. OK, fine, well, rehabilitate them around your house then, because there's no way that I'm sitting next to one of that lot on the London Underground. They say we're a kind and compassionate society and have to give everyone a chance. All right, cool. Well, Usman Khan convinced everyone that he'd been rehabilitated and he stabbed his caseworkers to death in Fishmongers Hall. We're far too soft on terrorists. We're not talking about people who commit tax fraud or who don't pay a parking ticket. No, we're talking about people who plotted to blow up children. We're talking about people who wanted to behead people like me and you in the street. These people are out-and-out lunatics. And even if rehabilitation was an option, I don't think they deserve that option. As far as I'm concerned, they'll always be a threat. In my opinion, the only way to nullify that threat is this. Once they've been found guilty of a serious terror offence, I'd execute them. If you want, you can try and rehabilitate them after that, if you really like. Be my guest. Yeah, I'm just sick of it. I'm just absolutely sick of it. It's an accident waiting to happen. And these people on the parole board, move them in next to you.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't execute them personally. I think the sentencing guidelines in this country are shambolic and pathetic for all sorts of serious crimes. I speak a lot on this programme about the sorts of sentences that people who murder children get, people who torture their own children to death, and they end up being out in a matter of years, really. So, you know, I'm almost not surprised that if that's how we treat some who I would consider as the worst of the worst, you know, people who kill children, I'm not surprised that people who look at terrorist materials and radicalise people don't get anything near their just their due sentences.
I think it's a question, isn't it, of whether or not people believe that they can be rehabilitated. Now, I clearly do not think that once you've made the step from, I don't know, making a bomb and planning to pop that off at a primary school, for example. I think you've gone too far there. But anyway, get your views in, GBViews, GBnews.uk, because we're going to be going to this later on in the show. Are we too soft on terrorists? How are we handling terrorism? So I want your views for that so we can bring them up then.
Yes, but let's go back to that big story of yesterday and today. Prime Minister Boris Johnson faced a vote of confidence last night, coming out on top by a narrow margin. Despite his victory, the results reveal that 4 in 10 Conservative MPs voted against the Prime Minister, which is a higher proportion than voted against Theresa May in 2018 and Margaret Thatcher in 1990.
Yeah, well, in a speech after the vote, a defiant Boris Johnson called the result decisive and vowed to move on and deliver for Britain.
And what we need to do now is come together as a government, as a party, and that is exactly what we can now do. And what this gives us is the opportunity to put behind us all the stuff that I know the media have quite properly wanted to focus on for a very long time, and to do our job, which is to focus on the stuff that I think the public actually want us to be talking about.
Well, what do the great British public think about the Prime Minister's survival? Remember, you can email in gbvs@gbnews.uk to let us know your views. But one man who is an expert engaging the public mood is Sir John Curtis, who's a political scientist and Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde. Thank you, Sir John Curtis, for joining us this morning. Look, Boris Johnson has survived the vote of his Parliamentary Conservative Party. How would he fare if he was if his leadership was being put to a vote of the general public?
The honest truth is he would be out on his ear by more or less the reverse of the result of the Conservative ballot. We actually had 3 opinion polls yesterday morning in the wake of the announcement that the ballot was going to take place. They found 60% of people saying that the Prime Minister should resign. That's exactly the same as what the polls were saying in the immediate wake of the publication of the Sue Gray report. And indeed is very similar to the 63% of people who are saying he should resign way back when this story first broke in December and January of last year. Now, of course, those who voted Conservative in 2019 are less keen on the idea of the Prime Minister resigning, but even so, again, yesterday's polls, as the previous ones, suggest that around 1 in 3 of those who voted for Boris Johnson in 2019 think he should go. So there is no doubt that the Prime Minister is in deep water with the public so far as the party issue is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can just speak about a bit more about those demographics and those differences between the groups who have changed their mind or their opinions about Boris Johnson. Obviously, he won a lot of red wall seats in the 2019 general election, and a lot of those MPs probably owe their job to Boris Johnson. What is the feeling, the mood in those sorts of red wall seats when it comes to how Boris Johnson's doing?
Well, the truth is that particularly if you look at the views of Leave voters, who are more common in so-called red wall constituencies, whereas back in December 2019, around 3/4 of those people who voted Leave in 2016 voted for the Conservatives and for Mr Johnson. In the current polls, the proportion who would do so is only just over 50%. Or to put it slightly differently, around 1 in 3 Leave voters who voted Conservative in 2019 are at the moment saying they would not vote for the party if there were a general election now. So that inevitably means that the party is likely to struggle in red wall seats, but frankly, it's also going to struggle in blue wall seats as well at the moment. And we've seen a couple of opinion polls in Wakefield together with indeed the results of the local elections in Wakefield. One of the classic red wall constituencies with a by-election later this month, they all point pretty firmly to a Conservative defeat. So it's not the case that Boris Johnson's lost the Remain end of his support. He's lost some of that as well, but he's also been losing ground very heavily amongst those who voted for Brexit and many of those who voted for Boris Johnson because of Brexit.
Look, I mean, you absolutely no disrespect here. You are a standalone, eminent person in your field, but it's all very well and good saying that people have lost, faith in Boris Johnson. But I think people have lost faith in pollsters, haven't they? I mean, they're wrong more times than Michael Fish, as far as I can tell. They're wrong about the American election. They're wrong about Brexit. I mean, how do we know this is true?
Well, the honest truth is they weren't as wrong about Brexit as you might imagine. Of the 6 final polls, 2 had Leave ahead. And if you take all of the polls that were conducted during the EU referendum campaign...
So we were just being lied to by the BBC, were we?
So sorry, Patrick, let's just get our polling history right. There are mistakes in the polls, but let me put it like this, Patrick. If an opinion poll after opinion poll repeatedly tell you that around 3/4 of people say that the Prime Minister was not telling the truth about Partygate, OK, we can have an argument about whether or not the real figure is 80%, 75%, 70%, or even 66%. But what you know when polls repeatedly come up with that kind of number is that the vast majority of people do not believe the Prime Minister's account of the Partygate scandal. And of course, you do then actually see then eventually reflected in what people say to camera. And the boos that you heard of the Prime Minister outside St Paul's Cathedral, they're not necessarily representative, but they are iconic of a mood that is very clearly...
Can you understand why people don't trust the polls?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I would always say to people that you should take polls, but you should never inhale them. And you should certainly not presume that they're going to be pinpoint accurate. But the point is, when polls repeatedly tell you that the government, that the Prime Minister is not believed, then you should be sitting up and taking notice and not assume that this is some fabrication of polling error. That, I think, is to take reasonable scepticism about the polls to an undue extent and as a result, perhaps blind yourself politically as to what is actually going on amongst the wider public.
Good stuff. Look, thank you very, very much. Really appreciate you, as always. John Curtis, of course, pollster expert.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's go to your views. Lots of you, of course, have an opinion on the Prime Minister, and I have to say many of our viewers have a positive opinion of the Prime Minister. Ian here says, forget Partygate, it's just a distraction. What about his manifesto promises to crack down on crime and immigration? Policing is now non-existent. So I think that's an important point, actually, because I can't remember who said this, but I read this on Twitter. I think it was an MP who said this, that people are voting, the people who voted for Boris Johnson yesterday in that confidence vote, his MPs, were not voting necessarily for Boris Johnson. They were voting for him to get on with what they promised the British public in 2019. Their vote, it's a vote to crack on with that policy agenda they put forward in their manifesto, which they haven't been able to really get on with. So, you know, many people will be thinking, let's just get on with what you said you would do.
Excuse me, gosh. They have also changed that manifesto a little bit as well, haven't they? I mean, I'm not sure how many people voted for this kind of big net zero.
No, that was in the manifesto, to be fair, going net zero by 2050.
Yeah, I know, but to this extent right now, you know, it was just a bit, I think it's a bit nuts. But anyway, Graham's been in touch. I would vote for Boris, but not for the Conservative Party as it is today. They're a bunch of children. That's Graham's view. Of course it is. Loads of you been getting in touch as well about what I said earlier about terrorists, which is that I would frankly execute them. And yes, people seem to be largely in favour of that particular view. We're going to be talking about how we handle terror later. GBViews, gbnews.uk.
Yes, well, after the break, now that he has survived that vote of confidence, where does the Prime Minister go from here, and how will his rivals exploit the divisions? Don't go away. We'll speak about that after this weather.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Dry and bright for many of us today, but not for all. There will be some showers in the south. However, away from the showers, it's going to feel warm in many places. One area of low pressure is moving away. Another one is approaching for later in the day. A deeper one is approaching for later in the week to bring a windy spell Thursday, Friday and Saturday. But in the meantime, in between these lows, a lot of cloud for many, especially for southern parts of the country where we've started off with some light rain and drizzle, and another area of cloud feeding into eastern parts of northern England. But Scotland sees plenty of sunny spells. Central parts of England also sunny spells, and where we get the sunshine, 22 Celsius is possible. Warm again also for western Scotland, but showers will form in places, and some more prolonged showery rain pushes in from the southwest through the evening. Now that spreads into Northern Ireland. Much of England and Wales sees a couple of hours of rain, heavy at times, before it pushes into central and southern Scotland by dawn. And the cloud and the rain will keep the temperatures up into the teens in many spots, but the far north of Scotland stays clear of the rain, and it will be a cooler start to the day here. Actually, the north of Scotland sees the best of the weather on Wednesday. Sunny spells and feeling warm in places, but slow-moving area of rain across central Scotland. A lot of low cloud here will make it feel on the cool side. Northern Ireland seeing some heavy showers. Northern England, slow-moving showers as well. Tricky driving conditions. Further south, some lively downpours also across central and southern England as well as Wales, but these will move through with a bit more of a pace because of a stronger breeze. Now, the showers and the longer spells of rain tend to ease overnight. Thursday starts off relatively dry in many places before further rain in the west later. Then it turns increasingly windy.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
OK, good morning, everyone. It's 10:23. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Murky on GB News, live as ever on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, now more reaction and analysis to this morning's top story. Prime Minister Boris Johnson survived a vote of confidence among his Conservative MPs last night, of course. However, his margin of just 63 votes is less than that of Theresa May and Margaret Thatcher when they survived votes of confidence.
Yes, however, Education Secretary Nadhim Zahawi remains optimistic.
It's a ballot. 50 plus 1 is a majority, right? Boris did much better than that. We draw a line and we move on because we've got 2 years to demonstrate to the nation that we can deliver on the economy. We've got to deal with the global battle against inflation. We've got to deal with the backlog of the NHS, safer streets, and of course, war in Europe. What do you think President Zelensky will be thinking tonight? He'll be punching the air because he knows his great ally Boris Johnson will be Prime Minister tomorrow morning.
Yes, well, that's obviously the views of Nadhim Zahawi there. But, of course, we are now joined, I believe, by Andre Walker, political commentator. Thank you very much. Friend of the channel as well, and also personal friend. Why not? Let's have it. Andre, how are you?
Well, I was impressed to hear you saying that terrorists should be executed, you old softy.
I know, yes, exactly. I didn't say exactly how slow I'd make it, but there we go. Right, so Boris has survived. How do you feel?
Well, I'm pretty happy, actually, and I'll tell you the reason. Had you wanted to be critical of Boris Johnson for enacting a policy on lockdown that he simply didn't believe and personally ignored, then I'm with you. As you know, my mother died during the pandemic, and it was very difficult to visit her, and many of her relatives were completely unable. But the reason why people are having a go at Boris Johnson has nothing to do with that. They're having a go at him because they feel he has been insufficiently obsessive about the lockdown. He's been insufficiently draconian on mandatory vaccines, and he has not been weak enough with the European Union. Now, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm given a choice between a hypocrite on the lockdown and a genuine believer, I'll take a hypocrite anytime. I would rather have Boris Johnson standing by his genuine views and not having lockdowns and not following these policies. But given that we don't have that option, I would rather, as I say, take somebody who's hypocritical on the lockdown, who is reluctant on the lockdown, than somebody who absolutely loves it. Because if we had Keir Starmer or Jeremy Hunt in, we'd still be locked down now.
I understand that will be why some people might be feeling that way about Boris Johnson, but that does feel like harking back to the past, because right now people aren't necessarily thinking about lockdown or no lockdown. That's not the debate that's taking place. They're talking about cost of living. They're talking about perhaps the benefits of Brexit. Do you think Boris Johnson has won their vote on that basis and that basis alone? Because he doesn't have much else going for him right now, does he?
Well, hang on a second. You're talking about integrity. Let's just think about integrity. Integrity is not Keir Starmer going to negotiate with Michel Barnier behind the back of the British government to ensure that we got a worse Brexit deal, something, incidentally, that would have been a criminal offence in the United States of America. I don't think integrity is Jeremy Hunt saying that the Conservative Party
but do you think Boris Johnson... I mean, you've just called him... You've just called Boris Johnson a hypocrite. Surely you're not suggesting he's both a hypocrite and has integrity?
No, I'm saying that the real lack of integrity is when Jeremy Hunt wants the lockdown policy to follow that of communist China. As far as I'm concerned, all of these people are completely nuts when it comes to this issue. But Boris Johnson is at least a reluctant supporter of the lockdown because he's a hypocrite. And it pains me that a hypocrite is the best we've got, but it is very much the best we've got. Now, when you are talking about other things, the Conservative Party is disgraceful in the way that it has allowed the Green agenda, the Liberal Democrat policies, to dominate and plunge millions of people into poverty. But, we need to resolve that, and you don't resolve that
the 2019 manifesto, which gave the Conservatives their biggest majority in, decades, it had the goal of going net zero many times in that manifesto. It had that net zero by 2050. So, it's disingenuous and actually quite dishonest to suggest people didn't vote for that, because sadly, that was in the manifesto.
I don't see how there's anything remotely dishonest in what I've said. I've said that the Conservative Party should not be supporting Liberal Democrat policies on the Green agenda. But look, what the Conservative manifesto simply did not say is that if you elect us in 2019, we will plunge millions of people into poverty. We will damage our energy security. We will hand billions to Vladimir Putin, because it didn't say, by the way, that for every wind turbine, you need a gas turbine to back it up. And because we've refused fracking, that gas is coming from Putin's Russia. It didn't say any of that. And had it done that, then maybe the Conservative Party would have done worse in 2019. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm not here to defend the Conservative Party manifesto. What I am going to say is that we have enough Liberal Democrats, we have enough Green parties, we have enough Socialist parties. The Conservative Party should commit to conservatism. And I think that is a fairly obvious proposition.
Well, that's what he has to do now. It's a question, I suppose, of whether or not he actually does do it. But Andre, thank you very, very much, mate. Great to have you on the show, as always. Andre Walker there, political commentator, friend of the channel. But we're joined now by Democratic Unionist Party MP Sammy Wilson. Sammy, thank you very much for joining us. So Boris lives to fight another day. The mood music is this: let's draw a line under it. Do you think the public have drawn a line under it?
Well, I think the public have drawn a line under it a long time ago. A lot of the storm is really a media-generated storm, and I think that many MPs in the House of Commons have fallen for that trap. I mean, the thing that the country needs at present is stable government which is focused on the issues which really do concern people: the cost of living, the health waiting lists in Northern Ireland, of course, the Northern Ireland Protocol, and of course the big international questions and the war in Ukraine. And all of this is a distraction. And you know, you only have to see the amount of time that ministers' time has been taken up, the amount of parliamentary time has been taken up with it, to understand how diversionary this has been from the main issues, which I believe ordinary people watching your programme are affected by.
Yeah, indeed. And I think you're right. I mean, the mood music, anyway, in the inbox seems to be that basically they've had enough of this kind of stuff and that they want to move on. Of course, that's not necessarily a representative sample of the entire population, but there we go. The fact is, though, the Conservatives, as far as I can see, have massively weakened themselves. It was not exactly the most convincing result for Boris Johnson last night. They're heading into local elections, OK, they're expected to maybe lose those anyway, but it's not a great look. They've given Keir Starmer ammunition, isn't there? Haven't they, sorry?
Well, you know, it surprises me. Keir Starmer has not been able to really land a hammer blow on the Conservative Party. I attend Prime Minister's Questions every week. I watch it and take part in the debates in the House of Commons. The Labour Party is still struggling. It's struggling to make ground in its traditional seats. It's struggling to gain back support from those people who feel let down with all its wokery and its anti-Britishness, etc. And the Conservative Party does its job for them. I mean, if Keir Starmer can't land the blow, they just hit each other. And we have gone through this, of course, in our own party, and we know how damaging this kind of internal leadership issue can be and how long-lasting it can be in the minds of the electorate. And I think that if I was giving advice to Conservative MPs, of course it's none of the internal workings of the party are none of my business, but if I was giving advice to them, I'd be saying, look, don't be caught in by this kind of media-generated storm. Listen to what your constituents are saying, and I'm sure their constituents, Conservative MPs' constituents' concerns are no different from the ones that I get.
One more thing, if that's all right.
The concerns, they're no different from the concerns which I raised with me, and I think let's say focus on that.
Do you think that the Tories who voted against Boris Johnson are kind of like turkeys voting for Christmas? Because like him or loathe him, he is a vote winner. He's a proven winner, right? And actually they might be thinking, oh, well, you know, I'll tell you what, we'll oust him, we'll get someone else in, it'll make our seat safer. But it might not.
I do think it's something being almost convinced by the commentators in the mainstream press who are saying that he's a dead duck, that he isn't capable of winning votes for the party any longer. He's an albatross around their necks and everything else. But you know, I think that they should bear in mind that, first of all, divided parties don't win elections. Secondly, that the country at the moment deserves strong leadership and not distracted leadership. And thirdly, that if they do have a contest, they're not going to heal the rifts anyway. The rifts are there. They should be focusing just on the things which they need to do.
Good stuff, Sammy. Look, thank you very much. Sammy Wilson there, of course, joining us from just outside Parliament, actually. Well, look, ladies and gents, after the break, some of Britain's most dangerous terrorists could be returning to your street soon, as dozens are lined up for release. More of this with our security expert after the break.
A very good morning to you. It's Rosie Wright. It's 10:33. I'm here to get you up to date on GB News. Well, the Prime Minister thanked his Cabinet for their support during last night's confidence vote as he opened this morning's meeting. He told ministers that the government is now going to focus on the COVID recovery, inflation and rising energy prices. Speaking to reporters this morning, the Conservative MP Andrea Leadsom wouldn't commit to saying whether Boris Johnson is the right person to lead the party into the next election.
The party gave its views yesterday, and today is another day we move on, and I know the Prime Minister will want to focus on absolutely the priorities of this country.
So he's the right man to lead the party into the next election?
That's it, thanks.
President Zelensky has praised Boris Johnson for providing Ukraine with the weapons he says it needs to protect the lives of its people. The UK is supplying Ukraine with long-range, multiple-launch rocket systems that can hit targets up to 50 miles away.
I am grateful to Prime Minister Boris Johnson for his complete understanding of our demands and his preparedness to provide Ukraine with exactly the weapons it needs to protect the lives of our people.
Patients with long COVID are faced with often inadequate NHS care as diagnosis and treatment varies hugely across the UK. That's the analysis of the Royal College of Nursing, who are urging the government to increase investment into the long-term impacts and the treatment of the infection. They say there currently aren't enough specialist services to meet the demand. The government's chief scientific advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance, will receive an honour at Buckingham Palace for helping to lead the UK's battle against coronavirus. Sir Patrick was originally knighted in the 2019 New Year's Honours list, but will now be elevated to become a Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.250 to the dollar. The pound is 1.170 to the euro. The price of gold currently stands at £1,478.73 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah. We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Very good morning, everybody. It's 10:38. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's and Mercy Murky, live on your TV, radio and online this morning.
Yes, now, in some alarming news, some of the country's most dangerous terrorists could soon be back on British streets. Papers from the Ministry of Justice suggest that as many as 11 convicted terrorists may be released over the next few months, as dozens more near the end of their sentences.
Yeah, remarkable, isn't it? Well, according to The Sun on Sunday, those released by the end of the year could include Jawad Akbar, who's a man who wants to blow up Bluewater Shopping Centre in Kent, and London's Ministry of Sound nightclub in 2004. Jack Coulson, as well, is a Nazi sympathising pipe bomb maker and a top-ranking member of the terrorist group Al-Qaeda as well, not him, a different person, who claimed responsibility for London's 7/7 bombings.
Yes, well, joining us now live in the studio to discuss this is security expert Will Geddes. Will, thank you for joining us to speak about this obviously very, very concerning for most people who don't want these people living in their society at all. But those are the sentences they receive, sadly, so they're free to go, aren't they?
Yeah, I think you raised a good point earlier. It's more about the sentencing than anything else, because when we look at reoffending, The numbers are actually surprisingly low. It's about 3.8%. And although we had a succession of individuals that had been imprisoned and then released and then committed recidivism, if you like, you know, in terms of repeating the same crimes, that was in November 2019, February and June of 2020. So we had 3 in a row, which obviously then pushed forward the Counter-Terrorism and Sentencing Bill, which was revised last year, to try and make it far less easy for the likes of Usman Khan, who we know was released, everyone thought was rehabilitated, and then carried out, obviously, a horrific attack on
this is kind of the point. You hit the nail on the head there, which is, I suppose, the question of whether or not people believe that they can be rehabilitated, isn't it? And, of course, you know, we keep being told we live in a caring, compassionate society. I would argue that once you decide to nail bomb a school, for example, your compassion's gone out the window. But, you know, can they be rehabilitated?
I think they can, and I think there can be a lot more sort of measures in place which the Counter-Terrorism and Sentencing Bill have addressed, like polygraphing, obviously, individuals. So, you know, Usman Khan was a great example of someone who applied false compliance. To everybody, obviously, around him, he seemed to have been rehabilitated, although subsequently we find out that the psychologist turned around and said, no, he's still a danger to society. So I think where it really comes to the fact is, from a personal point of view, I think they should be merited far greater sentencing anyway. And for those category of terrorists that are really at late-stage plots, very advanced plots, because obviously there's a real wide spectrum of individuals that are prosecuted for terrorism-related offences. And if we take it on a converse sort of level, you can have those that were, if you like, convicted of smaller crimes, that if you leave them in prison, they potentially become more radicalised because they are then within that group that they are seeking protection from or are more aligned to.
And because the vast majority do not get whole life orders, it means that at some point they will return back onto the streets, which means that people, ordinary law-abiding citizens, could be walking living next to some of these people. Are there any mechanisms in place for communities, neighbourhoods to be made aware when perhaps somebody like this, who has been convicted of a crime like this, is moving next door to them?
Well, it's a difficult one. It's a little bit like in America, where they have, obviously, the sexual offenders lists, which are publicly available, so you can see if there are any convicted paedophiles, for example, in your neighbourhood. Now, on some regards, I think that's a very good thing, because, obviously, it forewarns you of the potential threat that there could be to your own children. When it comes to terrorists, they could be obviously vilified. Maybe if they have rehabilitated, and this is the kind of humane side of me coming out, that maybe they were misguided, they were misdirected, they were indoctrinated, they now have been rehabilitated. They need to have a chance, like any criminal, to sort of reconverge into society, into community. So it's a difficult balancing act, but the security services are certainly monitoring those that they deem to be of greater risk that have been released because of the legal mechanisms in place.
Yeah, there was a chap there, I forget his name now, but he was a member of a neo-Nazi organisation. And by the way, for anyone watching this, I would apply the same thing there. Anyone who's a convicted terrorist and certainly a late-stage plot, regardless of whether it's far-right or Islamist or whatever, I think I apply the same logic to that. But we keep being told that the far-right is the fastest-growing terror threat in the country. OK, fine, but it's from a pretty low base. The main threat is Islamist terrorism, isn't it?
Well, no, it's almost on an equal balance now. So the far-right threat has been fuelled by not only sort of the anti-vax squad during the whole COVID-19 pandemic, but also by a lot of the anti-immigration rhetoric. So you do have a very rising far-right threat. And although, again, this falls into two categories.
Less militant now, I don't know. I mean,
they are very militant. I mean, there are two categories, if you like, of terrorism groups. There's the types like ISIL, you know, Islamic State, who will use terrorism in a very sort of direct and very obvious sense. Then you've got the much more insidious groups, like Muslim Brotherhood, for example, that work on a kind of quasi-legit political platform that are trying to indoctrinate and trying to develop people into their way of thinking, which is to be subordinated to that particular interpretation of Islamic law. So, again, you've got two types, and the latter of the two is the one which is not covered by the Counter-Terrorism and Sentencing Bill, which actually prevails as a far greater threat as we could potentially see. And that same grouping, that latter group, also applies to some of the far-right groups, which are deemed to be legitimate, far-right, anti-immigration, which seem to be a kind of fairly inert threat, but there are those sections within those groups which are a considerable threat.
Will, thank you very much. As always, Will Getty's there, security expert, friend of the channel as well. Well, look, get your views coming in, GBviews at gbnews.uk. What do you make of that, the fact that loads of terrorists essentially are about to be back out and about on our streets? But moving away from that for now, thousands of holidaymakers are reportedly stranded overseas after numerous flights have been cancelled to the UK.
Yes, many families and couples were due to return to the UK over the weekend, but more than 100 flights were cancelled due to ongoing issues with staff shortages that have plagued airports for months. London Mayor Sadiq Khan has blamed Brexit for the travel chaos, saying immigration rules need to be relaxed in order for European workers to return to help with those staffing shortages.
Yes, but is this the key problem? Well, let's talk to our GB News East Midlands reporter Will Hollis, who's at Birmingham Airport to get the latest for us. What's going on, Will?
Hi, yeah, good morning. Obviously, this is a story that isn't going away. We can be talking about Boris Johnson as much as we might like to today, but travel is still a big thing that's hitting people really hard. People that might be travelling from Birmingham Airport, Manchester Airport, Gatwick. People having a lot of problems there. The majority of the problems that people are having are those long delays. Sure, that's a bit of a pain, but the biggest pain, of course, is getting to miss your holiday, having a flight cancelled. It's really tricky when you suddenly have to do almost the walk of shame and go back home and say my flight was cancelled. Can you imagine, though, being in another country, having just finished your holiday and then being stuck? Well, that's what the problem so many people right now are facing when they've had a cancelled flight when they're away in Turkey or Spain or somewhere else in Europe. One of the problems that people have been facing are that they've been at desks where they can't really get much help, where there's a large group of people who are quite unhappy and quite let down by their airlines, feeling stranded. Another one of the problems that we've been reporting about in the news is that people have been given phone lines, helplines, and then nobody's on the other end to answer the phone. So, of course, this is a problem that's been going on for a number of weeks. We saw it during the Easter holidays. We've seen it over the Platinum period. But now people were quite hopeful that because the holidays have ended and things are starting to get back to normal, that maybe things will calm down. We've had a few months. We know that Grant Shapps has been talking to the airline industry, saying you've had your money, you've had your funding, you've had time, you really need to sort this problem out. Now, as you said there at the start, Sadiq Khan, he put the blame on Brexit when he was speaking to the BBC over the weekend. He said that because of the fact that the labour isn't coming in from abroad, from Europe, because of the immigration laws, there aren't people working these jobs. Now, the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, said that it's not just about Brexit. It's obviously to do with COVID as well, a backlog of redundancies that were made during COVID, and he says that it's time for the airlines to really step up and solve some of these problems. Now, one thing that Birmingham Airport, one of the airports, just like many that is struggling at the moment, one of the things that they said is they had to make 43% of their staff redundant during the pandemic, and while they are trying to raise their staffing levels and they are training lots of different people, it will take time, and I know that this is one of the big problems that the airline industry is facing right now. Time that it takes to get security checks done, time that it takes to get people through the airports, but I know that a lot of people are still very hopeful to get their holidays over the summer period, but that main summer period is coming even closer, and how quickly we'll be able to solve this problem, we'll have to wait and see.
Yes, very disappointing for lots of families. Will Hollis, thank you for giving us that update. He's at Birmingham Airport there. Doesn't look like many people are going to have the summer holidays they planned in a month or so when the schools close.
No, but, you know, holiday in Britain, people. I mean, you haven't got a choice now, but holiday in Britain, OK? It's a lovely country.
Yeah,
we've got loads going on.
I choose to holiday in Britain, not out of being forced to, but because I just love the British countryside, and I think there's lots to explore.
It is, it's great. It's absolutely fantastic. Anyway, right, moving on. Now, I'll tell you what, someone who's literally walking the length of Britain, actually. Friend of the channel, Nathan Dunne, is fundraising for the mental health charity Mind by completing a world record-breaking barefoot walk down the length of the United Kingdom. So, as he approaches the halfway point on his walk, he is also almost halfway through his fundraising target. So, he's raised a whopping £22,600. His target is 50 grand. And Nathan joins us now, I believe. Is he there? Yes. Nathan, how are you, my good man? You all right?
Hi. I'm doing good, thanks. How are you?
Good, lad. Yes. How are the feet?
They're hurting me.
Oh, mate.
But I've done most. You know, I'm over halfway now, so I've the finish line's keeping me going.
Good lad. Good lad. Good lad. Whereabouts are you at the minute then?
I'm by Ledbury, I think it's called, south of Worcester is the biggest city, or near Hereford.
Mm-hmm. So how many miles have you walked so far? And let's just remind people, this has all been barefoot.
Yeah, I think I'm about 850, just under 900 miles now.
Oh, okay, good stuff. Well, you're going great guns. Can I ask what? So are you mostly trying to walk on grass, or are you on tarmac, or what's the tactic?
Oh, it's been a roller coaster, really. I started off trying to stick to the softer grounds, but there's lots of hidden hazards in soft ground. You know, you can't really see what's in the grass, stuff like that. So then I got on the roads, and the roads are much tougher on the feet, but there's benefits to the roads because you don't get lost. You can see what you're stepping on, and the dangers on the roads are obviously traffic as well. So I just try to mix it up daily, and I've walked across all sorts of grounds. But yeah,
do you
mainly
get
at the roads at the moment.
Do you get some funny looks from people as you're walking around barefoot?
Yeah, I get either funny looks or I get asked what I'm doing, and yeah, I don't pay any attention to the funny looks anymore. So.
Yeah. How are you managing to stay positive? Because I know I was wearing a pretty uncomfortable pair of shoes for a whole day the other day, and at the end I was sick of it. I just wanted to row them off and chuck them in the bin because I got fed up. You've walked 800 miles barefoot. How the hell do you stay positive, and how do you keep going?
For me, it's to do with the reason why I'm doing it. You know, I faced a position that I was in where there was an option for me not to be here anymore. So I weigh that up every day against what I'm doing, and you know, I say it to myself. Some people may say it's a bit dramatic, but for me, this walk it's a difference between living and not living, and I want to promote a message that life is always the choice that everyone should make, and that's what I'm doing. And so I remind myself every day of where I could have been and where I am, and I'm grateful for another day of being here, and no matter how painful it gets, that's what pushes me through.
Look, absolutely, and I think it's important as well to say that you are obviously raising money for charity Mind, which is a fantastic cause, of course. I mean, you're doing all the heavy lifting really here, mate. You're walking from John O'Groats to Land's End barefoot. I've kind of just tried to hop on board a bit and said I'll lose a bit of weight, and then I am, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, yes, stripping on stage with the Dream Boys, which is I'm basically about to ruin a load of women's stag do's, I suppose, or hen parties or whatever you call them. But we are raising money, aren't we? How can people donate, Nathan?
Yeah, so people can either search for my name, Nathan Dunne, Just Giving. You can search your name, Patrick Christie's, Just Giving. Walk a Mile in My Shoes, 22. We've connected, haven't we? So we're either page you donate to, it's all going to Mind for that 50k target. And I'm on all social medias. I think you are as well. So yeah, it's easy to find us if you look online, and every penny counts.
Look, exactly. And right, so roughly how long will it be until you're finished, do you think, mate?
I'm aiming for the 3rd of July at 12:30 to be at the signpost of Land's End. So it's about 3.5 to 4 weeks away, I think.
People, if you're listening on radio or you're watching on your telly or you're watching online, okay, there's two ways you can donate. I'm just going to give mine because I know it. I don't want to get Nathan's wrong. It's justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christie's. It's justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christie's. As Nathan has said there, we've synced. And look, he's on just over 20-odd grand, I believe, at the minute, 22 grand, I think. We need to get to 50k, all right? I know times are tough, people, but please, if you can, I'm rattling the can here, okay? If you can, just give us a few quid because really, we're every little help.
You need to do something if he gets to 50k. Come on.
Well, supposedly, anyway, and we're fingers crossed. I don't want to jump the gun here. Fingers crossed. I am walking with you tomorrow barefoot, Nathan. I think in the afternoon, hopefully. So hopefully we'll be able to go. Just try not to get lost in the woods. Otherwise, I'll have to come looking for you with a camera crew, and it'll look a bit dodgy. But it's justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christie's. Nathan, you're an absolute legend. You are saving lives, mate, and it's an absolute pleasure. I can't wait to meet you tomorrow. Fingers crossed we get there, as long as there's nothing major happens news-wise, of course. But we have to be diverted away. But it will be an absolute pleasure, mate, to meet you in person and shake your hand because you're doing epic stuff and you're saving lives. So well done, Nathan. Done, everybody. Fantastic stuff. Thank you, Nathan. Keep going, mate. Keep going. Keep going. Good lad. Good lad. I'm not sure my feet are going to be able to cope with this. You
Your
know?
feet have gone through a lot, haven't they?
My feet have been through the ringer.
Yep.
Yes, exactly, yes. Anyway, we don't need to go into that. Anyway, now, a little reminder that every Wednesday we hand our show over to you. You do it.
Yes, well, every Wednesday it's your show, and we invite you to give us ideas about what you want us to talk about and what you think the most important stories are. And you can tell us what subjects need covering by emailing in to thepoint@gbnews.uk. So get your suggestions in for what you want to hear us talking about tomorrow, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to dedicate the show to you.
We are the People's Channel after all, aren't we? Well, keep your thoughts coming in on email gbviews@gbnews.uk. We will be back with more of today's top stories and plenty of your views after this very short break. Don't go anywhere.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question. Don't miss it. Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Dry and bright for many of us today, but not for all. There will be some showers in the south. However, away from the showers, it's going to feel warm in many places. One area of low pressure is moving away. Another one is approaching for later in the day. A deeper one is approaching for later in the week to bring a windy spell Thursday, Friday and Saturday. But in the meantime, in between these lows, a lot of cloud for many, especially for southern parts of the country where we've started off with some light rain and drizzle, and another area of cloud feeding into eastern parts of northern England. But Scotland sees plenty of sunny spells. Central parts of England also sunny spells, and where we get the sunshine, 22 Celsius is possible. Warm again also for western Scotland, but showers will form in places, and some more prolonged showery rain pushes in from the southwest through the evening. Now that spreads into Northern Ireland. Much of England and Wales sees a couple of hours of rain, heavy at times, before it pushes into central and southern Scotland by dawn. And the cloud and the rain will keep the temperatures up into the teens in many spots, but the far north of Scotland stays clear of the rain, and it will be a cooler start to the day here. Actually, the north of Scotland sees the best of the weather on Wednesday. Sunny spells and feeling warm in places, but slow-moving area of rain across central Scotland. A lot of low cloud here will make it feel on the cool side. Northern Ireland seeing some heavy showers. Northern England, slow-moving showers as well. Tricky driving conditions. Further south, some lively downpours also across central and southern England as well as Wales, but these will move through with a bit more of a pace because of a stronger breeze. Now, the showers and the longer spells of rain tend to ease overnight. Thursday starts off relatively dry in many places before further rain in the west later. Then it turns increasingly windy.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah. We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki, live on your TV, radio and online. We're here with you all the way through until midday with a show jam-packed full of all the biggest stories, loads of chat and expert guests, as well as your views, of course.
Yes, and make sure you get in touch with those views at our email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll get to as many as we can, but first, it's time for the latest news.
A very good morning to you. It's 11 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Prime Minister has told his cabinet the government will deliver tax cuts to help with economic growth, vowing to deliver on what matters to the public. Boris Johnson thanked his cabinet for their support during last night's confidence vote, which saw 59% of Conservative MPs backing the Prime Minister. The result means Mr Johnson is now immune from a leadership challenge for a year. He told ministers that the government's now going to focus on the COVID recovery, inflation and rising energy prices.
Thank you, by the way, everybody, for all your good work yesterday, because which was a very important day, because we were able now to draw a line under the issues that our opponents want to talk about, and we're able to get on with talking about what I think the people in this country want us to talk about, which is what we are doing to help them.
Speaking to reporters this morning, Conservative MP Andrea Leadsom wouldn't commit to saying whether Johnson is the right person to lead the party into the next election.
The party gave its views yesterday, and today is another day we move on, and I know the Prime Minister will want to focus on absolutely the priorities of this country.
So he's the right man to lead the party into the next election?
That's it, thanks.
Conservative MP Greg Smith, who voted in favour of the Prime Minister, told GB News the government needs to focus on the priorities of the people and not itself.
Last night, 60% of the parliamentary party, which is a decisive margin, uncomfortable as the 40% is a decisive margin. The parliamentary party now needs to rally behind the Prime Minister, accept that result, and get on with doing the things we were elected to do. Let's not tear each other apart. Let's have the debate on exactly how we are delivering for the British people, not about personalities.
Polling expert Sir John Curtis told us Boris Johnson has lost public support.
The honest truth is he would be out on his ear by more or less the reverse of the result of the Conservative ballot. We actually had 3 opinion polls yesterday morning in the wake of the announcement that the ballot was going to take place. They found 60% of people saying that the Prime Minister should resign. That's exactly the same as what the polls were saying in the immediate wake of the publication of the Sue Gray report.
President Zelensky has thanked Boris Johnson for providing Ukraine with the weapons it needs to protect lives. The UK is supplying Ukraine with long-range multiple-launch rocket systems that can hit targets up to 50 miles away. Fierce street fighting continues in Severodonetsk as Russia steps up its drive to capture one of the largest remaining Ukrainian-held cities in the Donbass region. President Zelensky says despite being outnumbered, Ukrainian forces have every chance of fighting back in the region.
We have a difficult situation in the east. You know the situation in Severodonetsk. We are maintaining the situation. They outnumber us. They are more powerful. But, nevertheless, I think we have every chance to fight.
Patients with long COVID are faced with often inadequate NHS care as diagnosis and treatment varies hugely across the UK. That's the analysis of the Royal College of Nursing, who are urging the government to increase investment into the long-term impacts and the treatments of the infection. Long COVID is being treated by some clinics as a physical condition, but mainly as a psychological condition by others. Amnesty International UK says that around 3 in 10 people are worried they could become homeless in the next 5 years due to rising housing costs. The charity is accusing the government of rationing access to housing due to a severe shortfall. They're calling for affordable housing to be made a human right that's protected in law. The government says it's giving councils £2 billion to tackle homelessness over the next 3 years. Abusers who strangle or intentionally affect their victims' ability to breathe in an attempt to control or to intimidate them, they now face up to 5 years in jail. It's a new offence. It's called non-fatal strangulation, and today it comes into force in England and Wales as part of landmark domestic abuse legislation. It's also going to apply to British nationals who are overseas. The Domestic Abuse Commissioner says the new offence marks a significant step forward to protect domestic abuse victims. Absences due to mental health in Scotland's police officers have risen by 22% in the last 5 years. Figures from Scotland's Justice and Social Affairs publication shows that staff missed almost 77,000 days last year as a result of psychological disorders. Scottish Police Federation Chairman David Hamilton told GBNews officers are under critical stress levels.
The reason for that is that policing is very much that service of last resort. It's where people come to when everything else fails, and people retreating back into their own core business, and police officers are left having to essentially pick up pieces and help members of the community. It's a complex mix here, so there is the traumatic experiences that we have to deal with, and the types of things that we have to see, smell, hear. You know, it's all very traumatic.
This is GB News, and I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to Patrick and Mercy.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's on your TV, radio and online. Here's what's coming up in the final hour.
Yeah, loads to get stuck into. The Prime Minister obviously survived for now at least. Boris Johnson won a confidence vote in his leadership of the Parliamentary Conservative Party, but 4 in 10, otherwise known as 40% of MPs, voted against him. We'll discuss what the future looks like for our Prime Minister and his party.
Yes, well, it's hard to believe, but we are now 3.5 months into the war in Ukraine, and Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has said that the UK will be sending long-range missiles to the country. We'll be looking at that more closely with a Major General.
I'd love to be called a Major General, anyway. And we'll be taking a look, shifting tone now, we'll be taking a look at honour killings as well, a form of domestic abuse where women are murdered for violating their family's so-called honour. Now, our very own Inaya Falarinian will bring us this horrific story.
Yes, very important report there, so stay tuned for that. We have all of that coming up and much more as well across the final hour, and you can get in touch with your views, GBViews at gbnews.uk. Let us know what you think.
Yes, but first, Mercy's going to give her opinion on racism on Love Island.
Yesterday at 9 o'clock, I was faced with a decision, a very difficult, serious decision. Do I watch the first episode of Love Island, or do I watch Sir Graham Brady in the 1922 committee room delivering the verdict on the Parliamentary Conservative Party on the leadership of Prime Minister Boris Johnson? Tough choice. Love Island or the 1922 committee? One is a bunch of self-obsessed guys and girls in front of cameras desperately seeking affirmation from the public and hoping to not get humiliated by being booted out of the house. The other is, well, Love Island. But eventually, I did settle for the 1922 committee. And it means that as I was watching that psychodrama unfold, I missed another psychodrama unfolding in the Love Island house, or more specifically, on Twitter. Now, for those who don't know, the format of Love Island is that a group of men and women who don't know each other get thrown into a villa and they choose someone to couple up with. Each week, they decide whether to stick with that person that they've chosen or couple up with somebody else. The contestants who don't get picked are booted off the show. I think that's how it works anyway. I've only watched one series. But apparently, in the opening night of Love Island last night, ITV left the public to vote to match each of the contestants. They put it to a public vote. But when the public paired up the 2 black female contestants with the 2 black male contestants, some viewers were not happy. One viewer tweeted, "So, are we going to talk about the black guys that were only paired with the black girls? Sorry, do better, England. The fact Love Island let it happen says a lot as well," one tweeter chirped. One tweeter even likened the public pairing of the two black couples to eugenics, saying it's giving eugenics. They said black on black pairing, which makes no grammatical sense, but there you are. Come on, children, let's all calm down now, shall we? There's no winning in that game, is there? Let's work through this. So, if a black person couples with another black person, they're open to accusations of racism against white people. If a black person couples with a white person, they're accused by other black people of not wanting to date black people. If a white person couples with a black person, they're accused of having a fetish. If a white person couples with a white person, well, then they're probably a racist. Goodness me, what an awful headache these people are. Maybe, just maybe, the public matched the two black women with the two black guys because same-race couples are simply the norm. It's not weird. It's true. Interracial couples, where the individuals are of a different race, only account for around 7% of relationships in England and Wales. In fact, in the census, for which we have a full analysis of, couples where one person was Caribbean and the other was white British only made up 2% of all inter-ethnic relationships. It is therefore a statistical fact, whether we like it or not, that the overwhelming majority of people date within their own race. And therefore, at a basic logical level, it's safe to assume that any given person has a significantly higher likelihood of preferring to date someone of their own race. But don't let facts get in the way. Now, I need to make this clear. I'm, of course, not suggesting that people ought to stick to their own race when they're dating. I'm merely stating the facts that they do. They do, in many cases. Well, I'm sure no right-minded person would ever suggest, for instance, that I should be barred from dating white men. I mean, just imagine how many hearts that would break. What I am saying is that not everything is racially motivated. And when I want to wind down by watching some trash TV at 9 o'clock at night, the last thing I want to hear is an in-depth analysis about the racially motivated relationship preferences of the British public. With all due respect, put a sock in it and give it a rest.
Gosh, I mean, that was one of your more out there monologues in a sense. I mean, I never thought that I'd be hearing so much about Love Island here. You, I think, are a pathological liar, though, because there's no way that you've only ever watched one series of Love Island.
Honestly. I've been offending people.
Who won the last series?
When I've been taking the.
Who was it? Who won it?
Oh, it was Millie.
And what about the one before that? What series was it before that?
That's funny. That's
okay,
funny.
fine. No, it's just... Okay,
no,
fine.
honestly, I've been for years and years criticising people for watching what is obviously trash TV. And, I've been a bit of a prude about it. Like, I would never watch people romping every night.
Yes.
But turns out I watched the entire whole...
Well, this is it, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, I think I've said this before to you, I made the worst deal I've ever made. You know, Donald Trump's like the art of the deal. This was how not to make a deal. So the World Cup was on, the last World Cup. And I was with my now ex-missus, which I think is rightly so. And I said, right, OK, look, I want to watch the football, right? She was like, right, OK, well, if we watch the football, what you have to do is you have to watch Love Island. I didn't realise Love Island went on twice as long as the World Cup.
It really goes on.
They drag it out, don't they? Just so that two airheads can...
There are always controversies around it. I mean, there is always things about racism. I mean, this year, actually, as well, they've done diversity and inclusion training for all the contestants before they've gone in the house to teach them about...
Can I just say the biggest scandal in it for me is that it kind of conforms to this idea of body... Yeah, you've got to be body beautiful. If I rocked up, I mean, the ladies would just scatter.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, they've put a deaf contestant in, more black contestants in than before, so people are saying, yay, we're most diverse.
Lads? Get the fat lads.
Yeah, where are the
Bring
fat
them in.
They all look the same. The bodies all look the same, so it doesn't matter if they're black.
Mine doesn't look like theirs. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, wheel in the fat lads. And then,
Fat lives matter.
Fat lives matter. Right, OK, gosh, we are live on the news. Right, OK, back to our main news story of the day. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has survived a confidence vote yesterday, balloting 211 to 148, so passing the 180 majority needed to remain in office.
Yes, well, the Minister for Brexit Opportunities and Government Efficiency, Jacob Rees-Mogg, said this was a resounding victory for the Prime Minister.
It was a good victory for the Prime Minister. He won comfortably and now he is getting on business. Cabinet this morning, there's a lot to be done. But it was a good result for the Prime Minister. He won. And he won by more than the one I had said was enough.
Yes, but despite this victory, the results show that 4 in 10 Conservative MPs voted against the PM, a higher proportion than did against Prime Minister Theresa May in 2018 and, of course, Margaret Thatcher in 1990, who, despite their victories, resigned shortly after. So is it too early to call this a victory, a comfortable one for Boris Johnson?
Yes, well, our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, is live in Downing Street for us to discuss this. Good morning, Tom. I noticed there, I don't know if you just heard, but we played a clip of Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Minister for Brexit, Opportunity and Government Efficiency. He said it was a resounding victory, but I seem to recall the same Jacob Rees-Mogg calling for Theresa May to resign, despite the fact that she'd actually got a higher proportion of the vote.
Yes, certainly. That does seem an inconsistency there. Although I do have to correct what your autocue said about a minute ago, that Margaret Thatcher got a higher proportion of the vote than Boris Johnson did in 1990. That's not the case. Boris Johnson got a higher proportion of the vote at 59%. Margaret Thatcher got 55% in 1990. But certainly Theresa May did get a slightly higher percentage of the vote. Although I think there are some different dynamics in terms of Theresa May's driving mission of her government trying to get Brexit over the line. She was unable to do so, and there was a clear ideological issue there with one clear opposition that coalesced around an opposition figure to her. I think one of the problems when it comes to Boris Johnson and those who are trying to oust him is they don't have a coherent vision. They don't have a leader to coalesce around. There is no obvious person to replace him, and indeed there are disparate people from disparate parts of the party who have different ideas of what they want to get out of ousting Boris Johnson. There are some people who want to oust Boris Johnson to have a much softer Brexit, to rejoin the single market. There are some who want to oust Boris Johnson to go back to a more Thatcherite way of doing things, to cut taxes and to stop U-turning so much due to media pressure. So there's a lot of different aspects to this, and that confusion almost has helped Boris Johnson. One of the other things that has helped him, of course, is thinking back to 1990 and what happened when Margaret Thatcher won that first vote by a simple majority, but not quite 15% ahead, as was then the rules of the 1922 committee, so it went to a second round. Well, before that second round got going, her cabinet met her in the building behind me, one by one, saying that they would support her if she were to stand again, but they thought that she would lose. They would use that phrase over and over again, a subtle way at chipping away at her authority, a coordinated attack on her, and of course she resigned 3 days after that vote. This seems different because the cabinet so far has been around Boris Johnson, has not been publicly undermining Boris Johnson in the way that the cabinet was to some extent undermining Theresa May, certainly was undermining John Major, and certainly was undermining Margaret Thatcher as well. I have to say that while you have been speaking, there's been a couple of people popped out of the door behind me. There was the Health Secretary Sajid Javid and the Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis walk out in the last 10 minutes or so. I don't know if there's anyone else still to drip out of that cabinet meeting that has been held this morning, but in sort of panto spirits, do shout, they're behind me, they're behind you if you do see anyone over my shoulder, and we'll see if we can ask them a question or two. But it does look like the Prime Minister is sort of using today to try and regroup, to try and set the party on a new mission, to try and talk about, to some extent, a more conservative way to govern the country, telling his cabinet that they need to get back to cutting taxes. Well, I suppose the proof of that will be in the pudding.
Tom, thank you very much, as always. Tom Harwood there. Well, let's move on now and talk to former leader of the Lib Dems, Sir Vince Cable, to get his reaction on last night's developments. Thank you very much for joining us. It's great to have you on the show. Well, look, let's get your reaction, I suppose, really. I mean, a lot of our viewers are, look, pro-Boris, right? I think that's pretty obvious. But some people would say he's a dead man walking at the minute.
Well, he's certainly in a weaker position than he was 24 hours ago. I mean, there's a key bit of the arithmetic that not too many people have focused on, that if you take out the payroll vote, in other words, all the people whose jobs depend on the Prime Minister, it was probably a minority, only a third of backbenchers who supported him. So his position is weak within his own party. I think, the opposition parties are quietly delighted that they're still facing Boris Johnson. They've now got a fresh cache of ammunition from all the wounding quotations of Tory MPs in the last few days. And in 2 weeks' time, we're going to get these by-elections where the predictions are that the Conservatives will do badly. And all of that means that we may be returning to this crisis situation in a few weeks.
Yeah, I get exactly what you mean. But I mean, to be honest with you, it's more likely than not that at this stage in a premiership, at this stage after the length of Tory party rule, that they do get a good kicking at a by-election, to be fair. I mean, that's not that uncommon, is it? I just wonder, Vince, you know, whether or not the other parties are even a credible option. This is the concern that I have. I mean, look, I'll nail my colours to the mast. I do it almost every day. You know, I do quite like Boris Johnson. He's a flawed chap. We've all got flaws, don't get me wrong, but I do quite like the guy. But, you know, there isn't really an opposition as far as I can see at the minute.
Well, he undoubtedly has, and I say this as somebody who supports another party, but he's undoubtedly got a lot of political skill. He's a very good communicator, and the reason he's still there is, as you pointed out earlier, because there's no obvious alternative within his own party. It's interesting, a few days ago, Dominic Cummings, who has been out trying to damage him very badly in revenge for what happened 18 months ago, has been out there saying that some of the alternatives are even worse. So, you know, he's to some extent protected by the lack of internal alternatives. The opposition parties are, you know, doing well, but as you rightly say, this is mid-term. They've got to consolidate their position. There are a lot of policies around, but they've got to create a vision to excite people, and we so far haven't quite got that. But if you're an opposition politician at the moment, I think you'll be quite pleased. And I hear the phrase, save Boris, sink the Tories. And I suspect that has a ring of truth in it.
Yeah, and I just wondered what your view was on what the Lib Dems need to do now, because as you say, there is perhaps a chance now for the Lib Dems to take votes away from the Conservatives in case it is already happening in some instances. But, you know, the Lib Dems aren't really a household name anymore, are they? It's not really clear what they necessarily stand for on a national platform. What should they now be doing to maybe get people voting for them?
Well, we had a series of very bad election results after the coalition, 2015, 17, and 2019 again. We had been rebuilding the local government base. When I was leader, we made significant advances in those and in European elections. And under Ed Davey, we're now doing significantly better. I mean, there is a fundamental problem under the first past the post voting system of breaking through. And that was true even in the glory days of Charles Kennedy. We got up to 64 MPs, but we had almost a quarter of the national vote. So it's difficult for us to win large numbers of seats. And I think what Ed Davey is doing at the moment is absolutely right, which is targeting a significant number of seats where the Conservatives are the opposition, and which are winnable. We may be talking about 20-odd seats. And if we return in the next Parliament with double, treble the number of MPs, we will be in an influential position. I don't think realistically we're expected to win the election, but with the Labour Party also doing well, there is a real possibility of a change of government and the opportunity to reform the voting system as well as improve the governance of the country.
Sir Vince, thank you very much. An honour and a privilege. Thank you very much, Sir Vince Cable, there, of course, former leader of the Liberal Democrats. Thank you for joining us on that particular saga. I mean, I would quite like to float the idea for a new game show. You spoke about Love Island, right? This game show is just a load of people trying to pick Ed Davey out of a lineup. Anyway, after the break, Boris Johnson may have survived a confidence vote among Tory MPs, but how secure is he? Could we be heading to another general election? We'll try and find out after the break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
Good morning, it's 11:26 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio.
Right, well, today's top story. Prime Minister Boris Johnson survives a vote of no confidence in his leadership. He won by a margin of 211 to 148. The Conservative Party is now visibly divided, though. So what measures will the Prime Minister try to take control and move on? Are we likely to see a general election in the near future? Well, I believe we're delighted to be joined now by Dan Hodges, who is not ready yet, so we'll just talk about it instead. Do you think Boris can move on from this?
He will certainly do his best. I'm sure he will. I don't think he's a man who's going to be giving up his throne anytime soon. But I think, as you mentioned earlier, this has now given Labour ammunition for the length of this parliament. Because every time he speaks to Boris Johnson in Parliament, he'll say, why should the general public trust you? Your own MPs don't even have confidence in you. He'll keep banging that drum because he knows 40% of the MPs.
That is absolutely spot on. He will keep doing that, and that's his right to do that. But one thing that annoyed me a bit, well, apart from a lot of this stuff actually, was, it's on the front page. He's been on the front pages for all the wrong reasons, day in, day out. Well, yeah, but that's purely because people keep putting him on the front pages. It's the same stuff. It was Partygate, and it was a version of that for like months now, a couple of months. So this idea that he's always, it's not like kind of necessarily one scandal after the next. Some people disagree with that, fair enough. But this idea that he's this kind of scandal, it's been the same, a version of the same story on the front pages now for months, right? And anyway, so there we go. If that what means he has to go, then I think we're in murky waters. But Dan Hodges joins us now. Yes, finally, good stuff. Dan, thank you very much for joining us. I think it's the first time for you on the show. Great to have you. Look, okay, what's your hot take on what happened last night, then?
Well, I think this is probably terminal for Boris, is what my hot take is. And I don't think you need to use my judgment on that. I think you only need to use the judgment of Boris's own campaign team on that. I mean, yesterday they were quite clear, Boris's own supporters were quite clear on 2 points. One, that he had to do better in the confidence vote than Theresa May had done. And his supporters were also being clear to myself and colleagues and others that they expected the number of people voting against him to be kept below 100 and well below 100, and obviously it ended up being 148. So on the sort of the standard that Boris himself and Boris's own team set, I mean, last night was a terrible night for him, and as I said, probably a terminal one.
Yes, and just explain to us what you mean by terminal, or what terminal looks like. Do you think he'll continue until the end of this parliament, until the next general election, maybe resign before the next general election? Does this mean he will now face lots of opposition and lots of rebellion from his own backbenchers? What does terminal look like for Boris?
Well, you're certainly right about rebellion. I mean, it's quite clear that the rebels are not simply going to go away, and there were so many of them last night that there are sufficient numbers to, if they choose to, and I think some of them will choose to play havoc with Boris's legislative agenda such that it exists. But obviously, I mean, as you've been reporting, there is a desire by Boris and people in Number 10 to move on from this. But the question is, what are they moving on to? The next thing we've got are the two electoral tests, the two big electoral by-election tests. Everyone I'm speaking to expects the Conservatives to lose both of those, so that will again increase the pressure on him. Then obviously we're in the midst of a massive cost of living crisis. Again, nobody I know thinks we're going to be coming out of that in the short term. So the question is, how can Boris produce some sort of political reset? Now, he could reshuffle his cabinet, but all that will do is place more discontented people on the backbenches, create more discontented people who aren't in government. So I'm not quite sure kind of what the circuit breaker.
Well, I get all of that. Look, I absolutely get all of that, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. But I think there might be a simpler option, which is just to go to a public vote, because actually, there isn't an alternative, is there? We can't vote for Keir Starmer because we've got absolutely no idea what he stands for or anything. The Lib Dems, all right, it's lovely, but you can fit them all in the back of a Nissan Micra. The SNP, I mean, no one here is going to vote for them. So, I mean, actually, is it quite simple? Boris just goes to a public vote and goes, have it then.
Well, he could do, but there's a couple of problems with that. One is, as I said, we are in the middle of a cost of living crisis, so you're going to have to expect the public to completely ignore that. You'd be having an election coming straight off the back of a vote in Parliament where 148 of Boris's own MPs don't think Boris is fit to be Prime Minister. It would be very clear why Boris was holding the election. It wouldn't be because it's in the interest of the country. It would purely be an election that was framed as being in the interest of Boris Johnson. I think a number of your criticisms of Keir Starmer are fair, but I don't think even Keir Starmer would miss a political opportunity like that, to be honest. That is the sort of scenario that Keir Starmer would absolutely love to have a general election in, as would the other opposition parties.
No, fair enough. I just wanted, because you said that, obviously, he could do his greased pig routine, couldn't he, and wriggle out of this, I suppose. But maybe that's a slightly more direct way of doing it. Do you think Rishi Sunak voted against Boris last night?
I've no idea. I mean, the one thing I do know is Rishi Sunak was very much missing in action yesterday. I mean, we had a number of members of the cabinet who went on and did, a significant broadcast around. Rishi Sunak wasn't one of that number. Liz Truss wasn't one of that number. Michael Gove wasn't one of that number. And I think it's telling the way that so many of the cabinet's big beasts, at the moment of maximum jeopardy for Boris yesterday, suddenly disappeared. And I think that's another reason why, as I said, I think this is a terminal situation for Boris.
Well, Dan, I certainly hope you don't disappear, because we've had you on once now and we're going to keep calling you, no doubt. Dan Hodges there, thank you very much, commentator for The Mail on Sunday. Really good stuff, that. Thank you, Dan.
Let's not mention Conservative Prime Ministers and pigs in the same sentence again.
No, not since
still have trauma
the
from
incident.
David Cameron.
Yes, OK, yeah. Or which, of course, didn't happen, 100%. Yeah. After the break, the UK is set to provide Ukraine with long-range missiles. We'll be talking to a military expert on the state of the conflict and whether there is an end in sight. But before that, here's this morning's news.
Good morning, it's 11:33. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Prime Minister has told his cabinet the government will deliver tax cuts to help with economic growth, vowing to deliver on what matters to the public. Boris Johnson thanked his cabinet for their support after he saw off a vote of confidence in his premiership, where 148 Conservative MPs didn't back the Prime Minister.
Thank you, by the way, everybody, for all your good work yesterday, because which was a very important day, because we were able now to draw a line under the issues that our opponents want to talk about, and we're able to get on with talking about what I think the people in this country want us to talk about, which is what we are doing to help them.
In Ukraine, fierce street fighting continues in Severodonetsk in the east as Russia steps up its drive to capture one of the largest remaining Ukrainian-held cities in the Donbas region. President Zelensky says despite being outnumbered, Ukrainian forces have every chance of fighting back in the region. Abusers who strangle or intentionally affect their victims' ability to breathe in an attempt to control or intimidate them now face up to 5 years in jail. It's a new offence called non-fatal strangulation. Today it comes into force in England and Wales as part of landmark domestic abuse legislation. Average spending on utilities increased by more than a third in May compared to a year ago. The average spending on those bills increased by more than a third. New data from Barclaycard reveals people are compensating for the cost by then giving up online subscriptions and going out less to bars and restaurants. Anyone who uses Apple phones will be able to edit and even unsend text messages in a new software update to be released later this year. The company have also announced an update to Apple Pay, which allows people to split the cost of a purchase into multiple payments over a 6-week period. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.251 to the dollar. The pound is 1.172 to the euro. The price of gold currently stands at £1,475.95 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for physical investment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Very good morning, everybody. It's 11:38. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's and Mercy Murky on GB News, live as ever on your TV, radio and online.
Yes, well, it's now 3.5 months since Russia invaded Ukraine, and UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has said yesterday that Britain will be providing Ukraine with long-range missiles after an attack on the capital, Kyiv, which the Ministry of Defence said was, quote, likely in an attempt to disrupt the supply of Western military equipment to frontline Ukrainian units.
Yeah, well, intense fighting continues in the Donbass region of eastern Ukraine. So what is the military endgame for both sides in this conflict? And are the Russians now advancing after early setbacks in their campaign? Joining us to discuss this in more detail is Major General Chip Chapman, former British Army Major General and, of course, former head of counter-terrorism at the MOD. Thank you very much for joining us. What's the current state of play, then? Is Russia starting to win?
I don't think so. There's been too much use of the term strategic in terms of Severodonetsk in the last 10 days. That is a tactical battle, and it's a sequencing of the tactical battles for operational effect to further your strategic aims, which is the most important. And indeed, it seems to me the Ukrainians are being very clever in the way they've thought the Severodonetsk battle at the moment, chewing up the best units of Russia, and meanwhile over in the Kherson Donetsk Oblast, which is one of the regions, doing a counterattack where they've got a lodgement to potentially use their best forces there, which would enable them to sever the line of communication ultimately down through the Crimea and across to Mariupol. So you have to look at it strategically from the east to west, not just at what is happening in the Luhansk Oblast at the moment.
And what about the food shortages that the UN has said are down to Russia, because they did walk out of that meeting when Russia's UN ambassador walked out of that meeting after they were accused of basically causing the food shortage crisis across the country. They were accused of using it as a stealth missile, food supplies. Do you think that's what they're doing?
Yeah, I think that's true. So in the longer term, militarily, Ukraine would be in the ascendancy. Politically, there is a weakness, and Russia could be in the ascendancy in the sense that they are weaponizing grain supplies as a means of trying to get leverage over Ukraine in the international community ultimately. And that is why, for example, they destroyed a massive grain silo and terminal in Mykolaiv yesterday. So they're doing that. And there is a strong element within this war at the moment from a Russian perspective of a energy, climate and food security signature. And we must, in my view, we've got to hold the line and support Ukraine and not weaken in a sort of appeasing moment saying you've got to go for a ceasefire, Ukraine, because food prices are going up. Because at the moment, as Zelensky said about 2 weeks ago, 20% of Ukraine has actually been lost. If you were to go to a ceasefire now and Putin took that would be worse than the winter war of 39-40 when Finland lost 11%.
Yeah, no, I get all of that. I'm a little bit annoyed, actually. I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm a little bit annoyed that our European friends don't appear to be doing as much as we are. Because as far as I can tell, if the EU had it their way, Ukraine would now be Russian and they'd be just dealing with the humanitarian crisis. And for me, it's a bit annoying because it seems a bit piecemeal. We can send long-range missiles and all of this stuff, and we can send bits and bobs. But actually, are we just prolonging the inevitable? Does it not need one big, concerted, unified effort here?
Well, ultimately it does, but countries are replying in three ways, both humanitarian support, economic support and military support. And we can get too emotional about this. So one of the most effective weapon systems at the moment in the artillery battle from the Ukrainian perspective is the French Caesar systems. We don't hear much about that because we like to sort of pile on the French. And of course, we don't want the Macron to say, give away X or Y to Zelensky. So we've got to hold our nerve and don't chase the error on this when actually we are fairly united at the moment. And of course, two of the long-term strategic aims of Putin have always been to weaken and divide NATO and to weaken and divide the EU. We should not let him do either of those two things.
Yeah, no, look, exactly. And thank you very much for joining us, actually, Major General, I must say, and for giving us your insight. And I think, look, you hit the nail on the head there. And someone like you, obviously, has been at the coalface of this stuff. It's easy for me to sit here and, maybe get a bit emotional about the whole thing. But, I think it's maybe a good dose of reality. So, Major General Chip Chapman there, thank you very much. Former British Army Major General and former head of counter-terrorism at the MOD. Just because the very latest in Ukraine. I was thinking this the other day, actually. We used to, obviously when Putin rolled the tanks in issue, we're covering it every day, and it was right at the top of the show. I think probably for about almost 2 months. Well, no, a month. We were leading in every show with it, and then it kind of feels like it's gone a bit quiet, and that's a concern, I think, because when it goes quiet, it kind of dies away, and that's kind of what Putin wants, isn't it? I think he wants us to all forget about it. He's playing a longer game.
Yeah, I suppose that's just the nature of the news cycle, I guess, because it becomes old news and people get used to seeing it in the papers, and it's less shocking. But it's certainly still lots of atrocities happening in Ukraine. But now let's return to our main news story and head over to Uxbridge to speak to our GB News reporter Alice Porter to get some reaction to last night's vote in Boris Johnson's constituency. Good morning, Alice. What are people you've been speaking to saying there about Boris Johnson basically winning that confidence vote from his MPs?
Good morning there. Well, I have to say I was here in Uxbridge yesterday and just before the vote, and I've also been back here this morning speaking to people, and there's still an enormous amount of support for the Prime Minister here in his constituency. And I think in some ways maybe that's not surprising. The seat of Uxbridge and Ruislip has been a very safe Tory seat ever since it came into fruition in 2010. So in some ways it's not surprising, but there is a lot of frustration from people who are very loyal Conservative voters who say that perhaps it's time that he was to move on in the future. This is what some people were saying when I spoke to them earlier.
In the beginning, when he started, he was doing some good things, but now he's doing a lot of mistakes. And I think this COVID or this lockdown party was the last mistake for me. He should be what's the word, dismissed, or should be removed. But they gave the bots to stay. But I think he will not stay for long or all in the elections. Probably he will not win the next elections.
I think it's very doubtful that he can survive this. I really do, because he, there's too many voting against him for him to be a credible leader anymore. The party's obviously disunited at the moment. And
I think he let the country down, and at the time that everyone who stayed at home and they were trying to protect each other by isolating themselves, he was partying. And a lot of people, they say, okay, vaccination and everything, but that's not all. He just let people down completely because he was encouraging people not to go out, but at the same time he was partying. And it's just unbelievable.
So Boris Johnson's still got your vote?
Always. If they try and get him out, I will not vote at all. I won't vote for Lib Dems, Green Party, Labour, definitely not Labour anyway, or even Tories then. No. They have a mandate to get rid of somebody they don't like. It's all about like and dislike. All right, he does stretch the truth a bit, but all of them do.
Of course, but, there you go. That was quite a loyal supporter of Boris Johnson there. Now, I think it's worth pointing out that the vote yesterday wouldn't have changed the fact that he would still have stayed on as the MP for Uxbridge and Ruislip. That wouldn't have changed. But I think what is interesting, when I've been out speaking with people, a lot of them are frustrated with him as a local MP, and that's many of them are sort of national Conservative supporters, but actually say they haven't seen him around at all. They haven't seen him at hustings. They say he's not involved with local issues, and many of them are frustrated about it and sort of saying that, of course, he's very much focused on what's going on at Westminster. Now, in that regard, he's quite lucky that there's not a general election for a couple of years, but it's important to forget that the people here are, of course, the ones who will be voting on Boris Johnson as their MP, and, of course, has an enormous impact on his future political career.
Alice, thank you very, very much. As always, Alice Porter there reporting from Boris Johnson's own seat. And it's interesting, actually, because I've done a few Vox Pops there in my time, and there is a mixed bag there. I must say, that guy's Irish accent, I could listen to that all day.
Yeah, do you know what? I do think... I'm not sure it's a good idea to have a Prime Minister also being a constituency MP, because, yes, I understand it's how things work and it's our unwritten constitution, that's just how things are. But can you really be an effective constituency MP when you're running the country, especially at a time when we're facing so many national and global crises?
I mean, I grew up in George Osborne's constituency, and he was, as far as I'm aware, the MP for the vast majority of my early life, and I never, ever saw him, ever. And the only one time, by the way, that we did get close to George, a whiff of George, was when he was on there's a pedestrian bit, it's similar to Uxbridge actually, there's a pedestrian bit there, and he was surrounded by these minders, right? And if you wanted, as your constituency MP, to go and just talk to George Osborne, who, by the way, was supposed to be doing a public meeting, you had to go through his minders to get to him, and he'd just look at you like dirt. Anyway, some stuff about George Osborne there. Now, let's take you through some of the headlines of the day that you might have missed. So, you do it.
Yes, well, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have shared a picture of their daughter Lilibet after celebrating her first birthday. This is the first picture they've shared, and for our radio listeners, you should go and have a look on it. You will have no trouble at all finding it on the internet. It is everywhere.
Auburn locks.
Auburn, indeed.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, yes. Who do you think she looks more like?
Oh, gosh, it's obviously Harry.
Is that because she's in a nappy?
With a touch of Meghan. Just a touch.
Yeah, good stuff. So Prince Harry and Meghan obviously said they were both incredibly touched by the birthday wishes for Lilibet, who was named in honour of the Queen, and it comes after they visited the UK for the Platinum Jubilee. It's a nice picture, that, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, his ginger genes have very much held strong.
Dominant,
they're very, surprisingly, dominant, because even... what's his name again? Archie. Archie's a redhead, a really bright redhead as well. So definitely taking...
Cute again, though, actually, Archie, I must say. Yeah, actually, seriously, credit where credit's due.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're both attractive people. They've made attractive babies. It's no surprise.
Yeah, physically attractive, anyway. The National Health Service has dropped the word women from its web pages, apparently, giving crucial advice for the treatment of cervical, womb and ovarian cancer. Good grief. For example, under ovarian cancer, the NHS website used to say ovarian cancer or cancer of the ovaries is one of the most common types of cancer in women, obviously, affecting the ovaries, which are connected to the womb, yada, yada, yada. Right, OK, but now it says ovarian cancer or cancer of the ovaries affects the two small organs that store eggs needed to make babies. Anyone with anyone with ovaries can get ovarian cancer, women, but mostly affects those over 50. I don't think I want to
now
live
I
on
have
this
to
planet
stop
anymore.
calling myself a woman and call myself somebody with two small organs that store eggs.
I just don't get this.
But also, I think it's...
Does anyone? I'm sorry, this is... I can't get ovarian cancer because I haven't got ovaries.
But the other thing is, it assumes that trans men, so people who are biologically women and then transition into men, it assumes somehow they're confused as
to whether or not they've got ovaries.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, so it's almost like treating them like idiots. Like, just to remind you, we know you don't identify as a man, but you can still get cancer because you're biologically a woman. Like, well, yes, I know, because I know I'm biologically a woman and I know I can get diseases that only affect biological women, surely.
Who are we offending here? And actually, it's a story that we mentioned yesterday. Yeah, exactly. No, but that's the point. Like, this is the thing. They're not offending the trans community, surely, by saying that things that are biological facts, although maybe they are. There was a story we were going to do yesterday, which, we got overtaken by events, obviously, yesterday, as I'm sure you can imagine, ladies and gentlemen, with Boris Johnson and all of that. I'd like us to cover it again tomorrow, actually, which is about the fact that in this country, as a report into this, in this country, we massively overestimate the size of minority groups. So, for example, like the trans community or the LGBT community. It's not to say that, all these people are great, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying the level of gravitas that's put onto not offending these people, or the amount of, I suppose, airtime in a way, although we're doing it now, is disproportionate to the number of people that there actually are.
Yes, I mean, transgenderism, intersex is such a small proportion of the actual population. Look, there are people who genuinely biologically are intersex, but that is a tiny, tiny fraction. And I'm really troubled as well by the massively rising rates of people as children identifying as trans as well, because, it gets to a point where you have to say, hang on, this massive upwards trajectory of this has to do with not biology, but something about society and how we're perhaps indoctrinating children.
It's nurture or lack of, not nature, isn't it? I'm convinced, but anyway, I'll probably get a lot of flack for that online, but moving on. Right, so we've heard of needing a beauty sleep to maintain a bright, lively and attractive complexion, something I know nothing about, of course, but Swedish researchers have found that sleeping well makes you look at others in a more attractive light too.
So it's like drinking, kind of. You have like beer goggles.
Beer
but
goggles.
Like
I've got sleep goggles.
Studying 45 young people who went a night without sleep, researchers from Uppsala University found that sleep loss made participants view other people as less attractive, less healthy, less trustworthy than those who slept well. Isn't that just because
if that's a
they're
report
grumpy?
out of Uppsala University, we've got to take it seriously.
The thing is, isn't that just because when you haven't slept, you're quite grumpy, so you just, everything annoys you,
I'm not
that
grumpy.
person's annoying, that person is so gross, kind of thing, rather than it being...
Well, it's just natural, isn't it? I mean, sorry, but if you don't sleep well, you don't look your best, do you? No one's ever gone, I tell you what, I feel great this morning, I didn't sleep a wink last
You've got
night.
it the wrong way round. They mean
what?
people who've slept find others attractive more.
I don't know about this planet anymore, people. Anyway, right, OK, but then, anyway, look, leave it, right? We've done the trans stuff, I don't know about that either, but then now some stuff going on about sleep, I've just lost it. Anyway, right, OK, so, moving on. The things we hate about ourselves are the things we should love about ourselves, as according to experts, presumably not from Uppsala University. Hairy toes are where is that? Anyway, hairy toes are a good sign of hair growth, and if you're going bald, you're less likely to develop prostate cancer, and more moles means that you'll stay looking younger for longer. I'm waiting for Ashton Kutcher to just kick the door down it. I've been punked.
Well, apparently, as well, according to these scientists, a generous bottom, like the Kardashians, is better than a big tummy, and a big nose protects you from cold and flus. Basically, I'll explain. I'm the doctor here.
Yes, it's supposed to be yes.
I'll explain the science behind it. Well, basically, what they're saying is certain hormones that, for example, make you bold, higher testosterone levels, will make you less prone to getting cancer, for example.
Right.
The hormones that give you a big bum will make you less likely to get ovarian cancer, for example. So they're saying the things that people tend to see as ugly can actually be beneficial.
Do you think if you're
for your
bald,
health.
you want to live? No. OK, fine. OK, no. Good stuff. Yes, no, interesting stuff. I mean, I suppose it's fascinating. That. I mean, is there any baldness in your family at all?
No.
No,
My
neither.
family's
I'm very
perfect.
lucky. I'm very lucky. There's no baldness.
Yeah, your
on
hair's
either
quite
side.
thick.
It is.
But I
thick, a bit
wouldn't,
like me.
don't jinx it.
No, I think I'm pretty safe. There's no balls on either side of my family, so I think I'm pretty much in the clear. I mean, we've got loads of other rampant health issues, but balls is not one of them. Anyway, right, now, a little reminder that every single Wednesday we hand our show over to you. It's your show full of ideas, and let us know what you want to talk about. But just quickly, sorry, just in case I forget, actually, I would like to say a very, very quick thank you to everyone who has donated. justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christie's. We have raised, since we've been on air, about 500 quid, people. So thank you very, very much. I'm just going to read out a couple of the names very quickly. Yes, I know I'm being shouted at here. So we've had Andrew, who's just put in a tenner 3 minutes ago. We've had Jenny, who's put in a tenner 49 minutes ago. Ali, 20 quid. Justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christie's. You people are absolute heroes. We're up to nearly 17.5 grand now to raise money for Mind, the mental health charity. Fingers crossed I'll be walking barefoot through the woods with Nathan Dunne tomorrow to raise money for charity.
Yes, and remember, get your suggestions in to the point at gbnews.uk to let us know what you think we should be discussing tomorrow, because we're going to dedicate the show entirely to what you want to hear about. But that is it from us, so don't go away though, because up next is Gloria De Piero with the briefing.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Dry and bright for many of us today, but not for all. There will be some showers in the south. However, away from the showers, it's going to feel warm in many places. One area of low pressure is moving away. Another one is approaching for later in the day. A deeper one is approaching for later in the week to bring a windy spell Thursday, Friday and Saturday. But in the meantime, in between these lows, a lot of cloud for many, especially for southern parts of the country where we've started off with some light rain and drizzle, and another area of cloud feeding into eastern parts of northern England. But Scotland sees plenty of sunny spells. Central parts of England also sunny spells, and where we get the sunshine, 22 Celsius is possible. Warm again also for western Scotland, but showers will form in places, and some more prolonged showery rain pushes in from the southwest through the evening. Now that spreads into Northern Ireland. Much of England and Wales sees a couple of hours of rain, heavy at times, before it pushes into central and southern Scotland by dawn. And the cloud and the rain will keep the temperatures up into the teens in many spots, but the far north of Scotland stays clear of the rain, and it will be a cooler start to the day here. Actually, the north of Scotland sees the best of the weather on Wednesday. Sunny spells and feeling warm in places, but Slow-moving area of rain across central Scotland. A lot of low cloud here will make it feel on the cool side. Northern Ireland seeing some heavy showers. Northern England, slow-moving showers as well. Tricky driving conditions. Further south, some lively downpours also across central and southern England as well as Wales, but these will move through with a bit more of a pace because of a stronger breeze. Now, the showers and the longer spells of rain tend to ease overnight. Thursday starts off relatively dry in many places before further rain in the west later. Then it turns increasingly windy.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.